This is Math 2, 3.3b notes. That's Unit 3, Lesson 3b notes. We're going to title it Vertical Angles Are Congruent. And this is something we've been talking about in class for a few days now. Vertical angles, remember, is when you have two distinct lines, two different lines, intersecting at any point. Vertical angles will always be congruent. The vertical angles are like these two there across, as well as these two. Those two there are also congruent. All right, we're going to get straight into the proofs. Number 1, given PV is congruent to RV and angle P is congruent to angle R, we want to prove that triangle PVT is congruent to triangle blank, and we'll fill in the blank in just a little bit. Let's draw our picture. We're going to draw that bow tie that we drew the other day in class. And we're going to title or label it PQRVT. All right. So something like this will be given to you on your assignment. Then we're going to have the 2-column section for our, did not need it that long, for our proof. And this side will be statement. This side will be reason. And I'm going to now change to pencil to put my markings in. Actually, I'll change to a different color pen to put the markings that they gave us. They gave us that PV, that's given information. PV is congruent to RV, so those two sides there. They also gave us that angle P is congruent to angle R. Now, this is very similar to a worksheet we did in class on block day. This one here, worksheet 2. Sometimes they don't give us enough markings and we have to add our own markings in. What markings can we mathematically add that is okay to add? These two angles. Do you agree those are angles that we can mark? It's just like this one here. We had something like this in homework or classwork on block day. We marked it here and here because vertical angles are congruent, and then we said angle, angle, side. Angle, angle, side is why the two triangles are congruent. Very similar to those type of problems. So looking at these markings, I marked those two angles are congruent. Why are these two triangles congruent? Look at one at a time. 2 angle markings in one side and the side is sandwiched. 2 angle markings and one side and the side is sandwiched. So indeed, I'm hoping you thought of it already. It is angle, side, angle. Okay, so how do we put that into a proof? Number 1, remember what we said in class and in my previous lesson I did with you guys on video, is that first thing you always write down is the given information. PV, and that's the way we're going to do it in this class. Some people will do it differently and they'll put the given information later, but for us we're always going to do it first. Angle P is congruent to angle R. How do we know that? It was given to us. It was free information. We didn't have to do anything special to get it. Step 2, number 2, is always going to be what markings, that's my pencil markings that I added in on my own. Number 1 were the pink markings that I put in there. That was the given information. Number 2, step 2, are the pencil markings I put in. That's right there. Now, I cannot say angle V is congruent to angle V. I was able to hear the P and the R because there's only one angle in corner P and one angle in corner R or Q or T. But in corner V, there's multiple angles. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 angles in corner V. So you cannot, please don't make that mistake on the test. You cannot say angle V is congruent to angle V. You need 3 letters. Angle, I'm going to call this one PVT. You could do TVP if you choose to, as long as V is in the middle, is congruent to angle RVQ. Or QVR, again, as long as V is, I labeled that one incorrectly. Don't know if I said it right and wrote it wrong. Anyways, it should be RVQ. RVQ or QVR, as long as V is in the middle. All right, now this was not given information. This piece right here, we came up with that on our own. How do we know those two angles are congruent? Because they're vertical, and vertical angles are congruent. Now we have enough information to say the two triangles are congruent. Those two pink markings and the pencil marking that we added are now enough information to say the two triangles are congruent. So triangle PVT is congruent to triangle, and we never did fill it in, so let's go back and do that now. PVT goes from 1 to 2 to none. 1 marking, 2 markings, none. So PVT would be RVQ. RVQ. So if you didn't fill it in the beginning, do it now. And why are the two triangles congruent? We wrote it down earlier because of angle, side, angle. You'll see it written like this sometimes, angle, side, angle, congruency, because we do have some, we'll learn later, with similarity. So if you see that, or if I write it, just know it just means congruency. We're proving that triangles are congruent. If you forget to write it, that's okay. If I forget to write it, that's okay. It just means we're using angle, side, angle, congruency, not similarity, which is something we'll learn in weeks to come. Okay, number 2. Number 2, we're going to find the errors. Sometimes there's one error, sometimes there's more than one error. We just have to work through the problem and figure it out. Okay, on this one, everything's going to be filled in. Let me show you what I'm talking about. You'll have the given information as always. TV is congruent to QV, and angle T is congruent to angle Q. Prove triangle TVR is congruent to triangle QVP. Everything's filled in for you. Okay, I am going to have you see what's the easiest. Let's draw a line from top to bottom, almost straight down, like a vertical line, but just slightly slanted. And then we're going to call this P. We're going to connect P over to Q. We'll call this one down at the bottom R, and connect R over to T. Oh. Okay, so T, call this one Q, and connect T to Q. Rewind if you need to. Okay, so all this is going to be given to you, including all the lines here. So just write it with me, and we'll go through after and figure out if there are any mistakes, and if there are, how many. Number 1, TV is congruent to QV. Angle T is congruent to angle Q. Number 1, given. Number 2, angle V is congruent to angle V. Number 2, vertical angles are congruent. And number 3, triangle TVR is congruent to triangle, they gave it to us on that one, QVP, because of angle, side congruency. All right, let's go through it and see if there are any mistakes, again, because they're asking us to find the errors. All right, I'm going to mark in pen the information they've given us. Oh, one letter I forgot to put in here, and I apologize. That there is a V. Okay, given information, TV is congruent to QV, and angle T is congruent to angle Q. Okay, that's there. TV, QV, angle T, angle Q, given. Number 1 looks good. Now, any markings I'm going to put on my own, they're calling these vertical angles here, I'm going to put that in pencil. I'll put a quick note here. This right here was the given information, and that was good. The number 2 was the markings we make on our own, which is this here. And they are vertical angles. So the vertical angles are congruent is correct. But do you see the mistake right here? I previously said on number 1, you cannot use just one letter. You cannot call that angle V as congruent to angle V, because it could be this angle out here or any number of these 4 angles in this corner. So that's one mistake. We'll see if there's any more. You can either write, actually I'll squeeze it in here in pencil. Okay, what's the mistake? You know what, I'll use a different color pen. We need 3 letters to name an angle. We need 3 letters to name an angle. Let's go ahead and correct it. If I'm calling this one here TVR, so let's see, I'll correct it in here. Angle TVR is congruent to angle TVR to QVP or PVQ. QVP. Okay. Let's continue and see if there is any more mistakes. So right here, that's the first one. We need 3 letters. That's the way it should be. Number 2, vertical angles are congruent. That's correct. Those are vertical angles and they are congruent. Next one is saying TUR, and that's a V. Sorry, don't know if I said U earlier and just wrote it like it, but it's a V. TVR is congruent to QVP. And I'm hoping this was bugging some of you guys, because we did talk about this in class with the single marking I had earlier. That was incorrect. If I used one here, I cannot use the one there. I'd need to. So I'm hoping some of you caught it and were like, oh, I need to tell Mrs. Torres that in class, and it's fixed. Okay, so T, V, R, Q, V, P. The 2 triangles are congruent and they're same by angle, angle, side. Is it angle, angle, side? It is not, because the side is sandwiched or included between those 2 angles. This is incorrect. What should it be? It is angle, side, angle congruency, not angle, angle, side congruency. Can you see that? They just mixed up the letters. They used it right. There's 2 A's and 1 S, but they put them in the wrong order. All right, that is it for this lesson.